All right.
Um,
Kelly, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for allowing me to hear the story. You just said I was the first person that makes me feel very honored. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know anything about your story. I don't know when your journey started, so I would love to hear, start off by asking when your journey started and who it's with. Go. Okay. All right, we're back.
Okay. He was my wild child, there's one in every family, and, fearless, wasn't afraid of anything. I don't know exactly where he got started with getting into drugs. I don't know which friend or what happened. I just know that one day I found out he was addicted to heroin, and he didn't want to be anymore. He wanted, was sick of it. He didn't. Um, I think it was a girlfriend talked him into it, and she left, broke his heart, and he just spiraled out of control. But I had talked him into going to rehab. Of course, he didn't go for himself; he went for me, so he didn't stay long enough.
Yeah.
And but he did want to get off of it. He was trying to get off of it, and but somebody gave him some with fentanyl in it. Carfentanil, apparently, is what they call it. And he didn't know it was in there. So I didn't know he had any. When I knew he was doing heroin, I would go in his room because he lives with me still. He was 24, and I would go in his room like 20 times a day to check on him because I was always afraid he'd overdose. And I didn't know he had any that night, and he did it, and I found him the next day. He'd passed hours before I found him. He was all clenched up, and apparently, when you overdose from fentanyl, all your muscles contract and you get bald fists, and that's an image that you don't ever forget. Is walking in and finding your kid.
I'm so sorry.
You know, and then telling his sisters and his brother, his youngest sister, she was just 3 years younger than him. They were best friends. They had been her whole life. The time I brought her home from the hospital, he stayed right by her side. She still struggles a lot with it, not having him around. He was like the family comic. Kept
Yeah.
everybody laughing, and he kind of took that with him when he went. And I just feel like if these kids knew what they're doing to their families, because and he didn't want to die. Matt wasn't looking to die. He wasn't trying to kill himself. That's been passed around a few times. No, he wasn't. He was not trying to kill himself. He didn't want to die. He wanted to get off of that. But it had but kids have such a hold. And they go through such horrible pain and suffering when they try to get off of it. It's really, really hard. But I think had he had a little more time, I think he would have kicked it, but he just didn't get that time. I've heard people been on it for years, but he had only really been on it for about maybe 10 months, maybe 10, 11 months, not quite a year. And he just got a hold of the wrong person, and that person's still walking around, nothing's been done.
Yeah.
Uh,
Was this a recent occurrence? Did this happen recently?
June, this past June. And yeah, it feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
But it's been about 8 months ago. And it's just not something you ever expect is going to happen to you. Even if you know your kid's doing something, you think, oh, it's not going to happen. It happens to other people, and it's not going to happen to my kid, but it will happen to your kid, and it will rip your family apart. I mean,
Was
it
so
rips
young?
your
Was
heart out.
he? So he has a sister, and how many things?
He has two sisters and one brother. He has an older sister, a younger sister, and an older. Sorry.
No, no, it's okay.
He's got his younger sister was the closest to him. You know, they were
Yeah.
inseparable. Um, but they were all close. All my kids were close, so it was really hard on all of them. They blamed themselves in some way or another, and you tend to do that. I know I did. I kept thinking if I'd got in there sooner, or went and checked on him sooner, you know. But apparently, at least, you know, going by what I was told by the coroner, it was probably almost instantaneous. You know,
Yeah.
They found a syringe under him. I guess maybe it fell out of his arm. It still had, whatever in it. You know, so he didn't even take I don't know the word I'm looking for. He didn't even finish what he was doing before it knocked him out, and then his heart stopped. He stopped breathing. It was horrible. I mean, by the time I got to him, he was already gone, but I still was trying to do CPR. But
Yeah, of course.
he was, his the fentanyl causes them to their muscles like almost go into rigor mortis almost immediately. They contract all their muscles, so I couldn't even pull his arms apart. He had them up around his chest. It's indescribable what you go through when your kid dies from drugs. I mean, I never was one to preach, but my God, that heroin is. I wish I could just run to everybody who's ever wanting to try it and go, no, 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 you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's horrible. I don't even see any purpose of it ever being in this world. It doesn't cause nothing but misery and death. We've had a lot of deaths in our little town from heroin. And
Where do you live?
Scottsburg, Indiana.
Oh.
It's a little bitty, dot on the map. I think Scott County has like 20,000 people in it total.
Oh, wow, it's tiny.
Yeah, it's not very big. And out of those 20,000 people, I mean, it got so bad that there was like 300 HIV cases from, they were sharing needles.
Wow.
Luckily, Matt was in that group of people, but it's a big problem in our little town. And I'm not sure if it's that way in a lot of little towns, but in our little town, it's really bad. And it's a lot of families going through a lot. I mean, just this year, I could probably think of 8 or 10 kids that have died from overdose, either overdose or fentanyl poisoning, or fentanyl overdose rather, which is usually they don't know fentanyl's in it,
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to wrap my head around why they would have fentanyl in it, but
actually, another person who I spoke with, her brother passed away from the same thing. He didn't know that whatever he was taking had fentanyl in it, and he right away.
What's really scary is, the coroner said that when other addicts hear that Matt took something and it killed him, they will want to do it. It will be some kind of attraction to them to do whatever, to get it from whoever he got it from so they can do it too. And it's like, why?
Even though they know what happened to him?
Yeah, apparently their thinking is I can handle it. I can be more careful. It won't happen to me, but I'll get this great high from it. They're chasing that great high.
Yeah.
I don't understand it at all. I mean, personally, I would be thinking, no, I don't want nothing to do with that,
Yeah.
But apparently that makes it even more attractive to other people to hear that Matt overdosed on it. It's horrible. I mean, there's fentanyl and there's carfentanil, and they're not the same thing. The carfentanil is something they use as an anesthesia in the hospitals, and that's Michael Jackson did that. An anesthesia.
But that's like under medical supervision,
right? And Matt he's by himself. He's in his room by himself, and he had no clue that was in there. And I always had this horrible fear that he knew what was happening to him, and he had no way to let anybody know. And I lived with that fear for a long time, and the coroner finally told me that no, he probably never knew what was happening. He just went to sleep. But it helps a little and not much, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps to know that he wasn't laying there hoping that I would come in there and didn't, you know. But I don't know. Everybody says, you know, time helps, but it really doesn't. It doesn't
No.
get better with time. It's raw and fresh every day when you wake up, because you know you go to sleep. Sometimes I dream about him, but then I wake up and it's just like it happened that day.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through all the motions of funeral services and trying to keep my kids from, you know, blaming themselves, but none of us have, you know. I've got one daughter. My oldest daughter is going to grief therapy. Uh, my youngest daughter's going to start going too because she's really struggling.
Yeah.
My oldest son keeps it hidden. You know, he doesn't want anybody to know that he's struggling, and I still cry about him every day. I mean, it's been 8 months, but it's just like it never gets better. It
Yeah.
never gets. It's just not natural to bury your children. It's just wrong. You know, your parents, you expect that to happen, but not your kids.
Yeah.
And for such a ridiculous reason, the waste. I feel like it was a waste of his life. And I kept thinking if somebody would just hear what happened to him and say, "Oh, I'm gonna stay away from that," maybe it wouldn't feel like it was such a waste of his life, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It will make a difference. You know,
Have
kids
you
are.
found
I'm sorry.
anything? Have you been able to find anything that just helps you just get through the day? I know, like,
I stay busy.
okay.
I mean, I literally stay busy doing something. I make a lot of things. I do. I make macrame and dream catchers. I paint, and I do that constantly to keep. If I can keep my hands busy, it keeps my mind from dwelling. You know, and I can't lay down at night and go to sleep. Like, you know, you go, oh, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. I have to basically work or stay up until I just pass out. You know, until I'm so tired that I can't hold my eyes open.
Yeah.
Because if I just lay down and try to sleep, my mind starts working and goes back to that day, and it's just all over again. It's the only thing I know to do. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a better way to do things, but that's the only way I know how to do it. It's just
Yeah.
keep my hands and my mind busy on something all the time, and then I don't have to think about that. I mean, I talk about him a lot with the kids, especially me and my youngest daughter talk about him all the time. You know, something
Good.
reminds us of him, or you know, he was you know, like I said, he was a comedian, and he liked to roast people, including us. And sometimes I'll do something and I can literally hear him in my head, you know, roasting me for it. And it makes me smile to think about him, but at the same time, and if I go any further than just thinking about what he would say or what he would, you know, the joke he would make, then I'm back to the tears again. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a double edged thing there. And you know, he was just on the verge of getting his life started. You know, he had a really hard breakup with a girl, and it's been a year just miserable. You know, and he had just met this other girl and was dating her and had a job he was going to and was moving the next week. As a matter of fact, he was moving to Kentucky with her and was just going to get started. You know, so I just feel like he just got snatched. It seems such a waste. And he was only 24, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know kids are tied younger, but 24 is just
They're still
so
babies.
young. Yeah, yeah, he was still, and he was my baby boy on top of that. And he had, when he was born, he almost died. was stuck, and he wasn't getting enough oxygen. He came out blue and all that, and so I was very I was a little overprotective of him when he was little, but I tried to break myself of that habit because I didn't want him to, you know, I didn't want to overprotect him too much. But then I think maybe I should have. Maybe we should all be overprotecting our kids, not letting them talk to certain people, being nosy about who their friends are and what their friends do and who their parents, the friends' parents, everything. I mean, I try to give my kids space because I thought that was, 'cause, my mom was a little overprotective and I rebelled, so I thought maybe if I'm not that way, maybe they won't. But I don't, I don't know. I don't think maybe I did it wrong or maybe there just ain't a right way. I don't know.
I mean, I just
Quick.
met you just like, what, 20 minutes ago, and I can tell that you are an amazing mom. You did everything that you could for him. I know it's hard to think that and to like really believe, but you could tell just by the way you talk about him and the way you did everything you could. You turn your back on him. You supported him.
I had a lot of people tell me to, do the tough love and throw him out, put it tough. I couldn't, they'll say, well, you can't give him a soft place to land. But if I don't, your kids on drugs, you throw them out. How is that helping them? They're just going to get worse. They're going to be out on the street and then they're going to start stealing and robbing and, for a place to eat, and a place to lay down. I couldn't have thrown him. I couldn't. There's no way I went to hell for him if I could have.
When you showed him love until his very last breath, I don't more of an amazing mom can be.
He was loved. He knew he was loved. That's the best thing I can say is he knew his family, not me, just me, his siblings, his dad, he knew he was loved. I just, his love could have saved him. He'd still be here, that's for sure. Because he was, we were together a lot. Because he was my last chick to be at home, The rest of them had already flown the coop, and
yeah,
he was the only one I had left at home. So we were together a lot, and we were friends as much as, mom and son. We tell jokes and had inside jokes, and silly things like that. And I miss him. I miss him every day, every second of every day. And people say, how do you keep going? You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I'm not just gonna lay down and die. I guess I'm just as long as God wakes me up every day, I'll get up and keep going. I figure there's got to be a reason.
And this is your reason. You're sharing his story, so if hopefully people watch this and they know someone going through it, or they're going through something themselves, they can see.
I just I think most kids that are on it, and Matt was among them, they're not looking to die, but they're not worried about dying. And I feel like if they could just know what it's going to do to their mom or their dad or sisters, brothers, whoever they're close to, how that's going to rip their lives up. Maybe it'll make more of a difference than telling them, okay, this is going to kill you. Well, they're not worried about that. They're teenagers or early 20s. They think they're invincible anyway.
Yeah.
And they're not worried about it. But maybe if they knew what it was going to do to their families, I mean, Matt would have never wanted to hurt his family the way it hurt us, especially his sister, his little sister.
Yeah.
She was, they've been best friends since the day that little girl came home from the hospital. I mean, he literally would sit by her crib when she was a baby and wouldn't go outside and say, Matt, we can go play. He'd say, she'll be able to play with me soon. And he waited on her to get big enough so they could run around and play together. So he would have never hurt her purposely, but I don't think he realized how bad, it would hurt us.
Yeah.
I just feel like he knew maybe it'd been more of an incentive, you know. But he was trying. He was trying to get away from that. But whew, you get your hooks in you and you don't let go. That heroin doesn't. It's horrible, horrible thing. I can't even. Horrible's not even a bad enough word for it. It's just it just wrecks lives. It totally, completely wrecks people. It eats them up from the inside out, you know. And you can see somebody you've seen last year, they look great, and you see them a year later, and they're on heroin, and they look like they're the Walking Dead. I mean, it just eats them alive, and people turn their back on people when they find out they're hooked on, and it's not. I mean, I get people saying it's their fault. They may have decided to do that, take that first whatever hit or whatever you call it, but nobody said when they were a kid, "I'm gonna grow up and be an addict." I mean,
Yeah.
they don't choose to be addicted to it. Everybody thinks, "Oh, it won't happen to me. I won't get addicted," but they do, and bad. Just it's I can't. You can't explain how bad it is. How bad they hurt. Matt would shake and sweat and be cold at the same time, and throwing up, and it was very painful to watch him go through it. But
Yeah.
he kept trying. I gotta give him credit. He was a stubborn little mule. He kept trying.
And I feel like if you haven't been in that experience, you haven't dealt with that, like you don't have a place to judge.
No, you don't really
Because,
don't. But
if someone were, God forbid, if someone else who never went through it started doing drugs, they wouldn't want anyone turning their back on them. And
exactly. I mean,
people need to understand that.
people that seem to judge it the hardest are the people that have never dealt with it. They've only dealt with it from maybe somebody's cousin's brother's little sister or something.
Yeah.
From a far off vantage point. They've only heard about how the drug addicts that they'll steal from you. Matt never stole from me ever. He never, as far as I know, he never stole from anybody to get what he needed. He would, of course, the little town we live in. Uh, it's one of these little towns where somebody like Matt, can go out and hustle up money by doing little odd jobs and things like that. And that's what he would do. Um, but he never stole. He never, you know, robbed anybody or anything to get his drug money. Um, now he would borrow money off me, which was kind of a running joke when he'd say, "Can I borrow?" I used to say, "Why don't we just skip the borrow part? You just ask me if you can have it." But he wouldn't take it if he thought I couldn't afford to give it to him. And I blame him. Everybody says, "We shouldn't have gave you money," but I felt like sometimes if I didn't give it to him, what was he going to do to get it? Or, when you're watching your kid suffer the way he suffered, sometimes you think maybe just get over this, by giving this money, he can just get over this hump, you know. I mean,
But again, unless they've been through it, they don't have the right to
yeah,
tell you what you should have done. Because if they were in that situation, they don't know.
yeah. I don't think there's. I mean, honestly, right after he died, and for a long time I couldn't say that word. I couldn't say he
Yeah.
died. I used to say left. Um, I second guessed everything I did. Every move I had made, every decision I made about him, I second guessed. But I've come to realize I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to deal with it because everybody's different. Every kid's different. Some kids maybe you shouldn't give them money because maybe that's the way you should deal with them, or I don't know, maybe be tougher on them. But some kids no. I mean, that was he was kind of a sensitive kid anyway, he get hurt easy and things like that. He always was, but I just don't think there's a pat way to, an overall way to deal with everybody. Everybody's different,
There's no handbook.
Yeah, exactly. They'll go to rehab and rehab treats them all the same way. And that's why it doesn't work a lot. Or, the court will order them to go to rehab. And if they're not ready to go for themselves, it's not going to work. You
Yeah.
know, Matt went because I asked him to. And even though I kind of knew in the back of my brain he was only going for me, so it probably wasn't going to work, he still went. He only stayed a
But
couple
that,
of
I
weeks,
think
stayed
that
longer
in
than we
itself,
thought.
that in itself shows how much he loved you,
He went, he went because
you
I
know,
asked him to
because
go. I begged him
if he didn't love and he didn't care, he would have been like, you know what, mom,
to. Yeah.
you know, I'm not going, and that's it. But, you know, I think that speaks
He was
volumes.
he was a kid that didn't say a lot, but he would show you a lot. His actions spoke for him. You know, he did something he thought he hurt somebody's feelings, his sister, me, or anybody in the family. He may not necessarily come to you and say, "I'm sorry," but then he would do something really sweet, you know. And that was his way of saying, "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
You could be a sweetheart. You really could. I, I'd have him back right now if he argued with me every day. I don't care. It's anything. Just I watch him. I have one video of him and his little sister in the snow. He was probably maybe 19, 18 years old, but I can hear his voice. It's the only one I have where I can hear his voice.
Mhm.
And you forget their voice really quick. And I don't want to forget his voice. So I watch
Yeah.
it all the time just so I can remember the sound of his voice. I love to hear his voice again.
You
He
know what?
was,
It's okay to cry. It's okay.
I do that a lot.
It's okay. You need to feel what you need to feel your feelings because you're the one feeling them. And if 1 minute you're crying, 1 minute you're laughing, that's okay. You know,
You
I
know,
never, I don't want anyone to tell you that it's not or feel like it's not
uh,
because you're the one living through it. You're the one going through it. You're the only one feeling what you're feeling.
I try not to because it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable after a while. You know, people tend
I
to think,
and that I understand, but you're the one going through it. They're the ones that can leave and their life just goes on. But this is your life now. And
yeah,
if they're uncomfortable, can they imagine how you feel? You know, so I think people
it,
need to understand that.
you know, it. I lost Matt in June this past December. Uh, my uncle, his youngest son, I guess he'd be my first cousin. He also lost him same way,
Mm.
uh, and it was so sad because I love my uncle to death. And he came to Matt's service because he said had to. He didn't, we didn't live real close. We didn't see each other a whole lot. And, he didn't know Matt really well, but going to his son's service was like being right back at Matt's. And I knew exactly what my uncle was feeling, and it was so hard to like. I don't know how to tell you this. It's just, but I know what you feel like. I know how you feel when people walk up and people are so cold. They'll just, they'll walk up and then oh, was it drugs? It was the drugs one, and you should have done this or you should have done that. It's like, no, my daughter, my oldest daughter, she was my. They wouldn't let nobody talk to me that way. She kept, she'd tell them, "Get away, leave my mom alone."
Good for her.
She was my little, she was my little protector. God love her. I thank God for her every day. She came home from North Carolina. Uh, like she got there the day after. It took her that long to get there, and she just took over. She took care of the funeral arrangements. Well, we had him. He wanted to be cremated. We had him cremated, but we had a service for him. She took care of that. Anybody that called, anybody that came over, if they didn't talk right, she would throw their butt out. I mean, she just really took care of us.
Good for her.
I thank God for her every day. She was a real rock for me. But, I knew she was hurting too. Her and my older son, there was a lot of age difference between them and my two younger ones. I had a miscarriage in the middle. So they kind of grew up, the younger ones grew up with the older ones watching them a lot because I worked a lot. So they were their babysitters. They were their second mom and dad,
Yeah.
And, it was really hard for them to, their baby brother because, once you have a baby brother, he's always a baby,
Yeah.
And I think that's why she still saw him. It was really hard. It was hard for her. She's doing counseling now. So she's a real smart girl though. She's in North Carolina, so she's not real close around the house. But
Yeah.
she calls me every week and every anniversary or holiday or he died on June 8th, so every 8th of every month I get a phone call from her. Mom, you okay? Mom, you okay?
Yeah.
And on his birthday was in September, Christmas, all the holidays that
All
I
the
didn't
first.
celebrate. Yeah. Christmas was just, I tried to avoid it as much as possible. I didn't put up a tree, I didn't decorate, I didn't, do anything. And it just it doesn't seem like Christmas,
Yeah.
It's like part of you's missing, something's missing, and you keep waiting. And it's almost like my brain, or maybe it's my heart. I don't know. It's almost like it won't let me accept that he's never gonna come back. He's
That's
not
a very
coming back.
hard thing to
When I try to
yeah.
force it with, say no, you gotta accept this. It's like my brain goes, oh no, can't accept that. No, I still feel like he's gonna come walking through the door someday.
Oh, hold on one second. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know if
You know,
you know my story, but my sister passed in September, really unexpectedly and tragically. And like with you, if I really sit down to think about it, it breaks me into a million pieces. So
yeah,
it's sometimes
like
harder to not think about it.
your heart won't accept it.
Yeah.
But
so I can totally empathize.
It's like you don't want to think about them, but you don't want to not think about them.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not one for grief counseling, but I did join this group and it helped a lot.
Good.
On Facebook for, there's a couple of them, but mostly for people who lost their kids, or one is just for, in general, people have lost somebody they love. And
yeah, that's how you and I connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those help a lot. I mean, if I was drifting, what I was doing. And my daughter's like, she's after me to get counseling. And she said, well, join a Facebook group. And I didn't know anything about them. I had never heard of them. So, if anybody sees it, maybe, they don't want to do counseling, but, joining those groups and reading other people's stories makes you feel like you're not the only one.
Right.
There's other people out there that are going through it too. And I don't know why that helps. It's a little bit. So,
yeah. Well, I know we live on opposite parts of the country, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be glad to listen.
Thank you. And I'm glad I got to tell you this story.
Thank you for sharing his story with us.
My big fear is I don't want anyone to ever forget Matt. I want everybody to remember that he was here.
Yeah.
He's a good kid. And we miss him terribly. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye. I'm here, how to get out of here.
I'll close it.